Picture this. You're lounging at a U.S. military base in Kabul, Afghanistan, where the sun beats down with the relentless enthusiasm of a personal trainer who just won't quit. The dry heat clings to your skin like that stubborn price tag residue you can never fully scrape off, and the sandy wind whispers through the base, carrying with it the faint scent of gunpowder and, is that a hint of someone's forgotten lunch? Private Jack, your ever-diligent comrade, is hunched over his M16A4 rifle, treating it with more care than most people give their prized vintage sneakers. He runs a cleaning rod through the barrel with a rhythmic motion, a task so routine that he could probably do it blindfolded, though we wouldn't recommend trying that in the middle of a training exercise. The metal of the rifle catches the sunlight, reflecting it back with a cold, steely glint that's as sharp as the plot twists in a well-crafted crime podcast. In the background, the base is a hive of activity. Fellow Marines are shouting out commands and encouragement during their training drills, their voices blending into a chaotic chorus that's almost musical in its disarray. The rumbling of armored vehicles nearby adds a deep, bassy undertone to the symphony, like the thumping of a subwoofer at an EDM concert, if that concert was held in the middle of a desert war zone. You can't help but wonder if there's a hidden talent show somewhere on base where someone could turn this racket into a chart-topping hit. But then, without warning, the sky decides to throw a curveball that would make even the best MLB pitcher jealous. The once clear blue expanse above you darkens and churns, morphing into a swirling mass of purple that looks like someone took a giant paintbrush to the heavens and decided to channel their inner Vincent van Gogh. And just when you think things can't get any weirder, a bolt of lightning streaks down from the clouds so massive it's as if Zeus himself decided to upgrade his thunderbolt to a supercharged extra-large model. The flash is so intense that it's like someone turned on 1,000 photo booth cameras at once, leaving you seeing spots and wondering if you've just been transported into a sci-fi movie trailer. Before you have a chance to process what's happening, you're hit with a sensation like being sucked into a cosmic vacuum cleaner. The ground seems to drop out from beneath your feet, and you're hurtling through a tunnel of darkness at a speed that would make a Formula One driver dizzy. You half expect to see flickering neon light signs reading "Welcome to the Twilight Zone," or "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here," as you spin through the void. And then, just as suddenly as it began, everything stops. You blink a few times, trying to make sense of the world around you. The first thing that registers is the sound of water, a gentle lapping melody that's as soothing as the white noise machine you use back home to drown out your noisy neighbors. It's a stark contrast to the constant din of the military base, and for a moment you almost forget about the strange circumstances that brought you here. You sit up slowly, your head spinning like a top. Gone is the dusty desert landscape and the utilitarian buildings of the base. Instead, you're greeted by the sight of a wide, glittering river, its surface dotted with ripples that dance and shimmer in the sunlight like a million tiny diamonds. Across the water, ancient stone buildings rise up, their architecture a fascinating blend of elegance and mystery. They look like something straight out of a history textbook or a blockbuster movie set, and you can't help but wonder if you've accidentally stumbled onto the set of a big-budget Hollywood production. As you take in your surroundings, you notice people dressed in simple, rough-spun tunics going about their daily lives. Some are tending to gardens, while others are guiding ox-drawn carts along the riverbank. It's a scene that's so idyllic and peaceful, it's almost surreal. You half expect someone to break character and pull out a smartphone to take a selfie, but of course that's not going to happen. This is no movie set, and these aren't actors, this is the real deal. Panic starts to set in as you realize the gravity of the situation. You reach for your sidearm, your fingers trembling slightly as you feel the familiar weight of the gun in your hand. A wave of relief washes over you. At least you're not completely defenseless in this strange new world. Glancing around, you see your fellow Marines starting to stir, their faces a mix of confusion, shock, and disbelief. It's a look you're sure mirrors your own. That's when Captain Johnson's voice cuts through the chaos. The man has a presence that commands attention, like a charismatic TED speaker or a seasoned stage actor. His voice is calm and steady, a reassuring anchor in the storm of confusion. He quickly does a head count, and to everyone's surprise, all 2,200 members of the expeditionary unit are accounted for. And incredibly, all of your high-tech gear made the trip too. M1 Abrams tanks, state-of-the-art bulletproof vests, M249 squad automatic weapons, and enough ammunition to start a small war. It's as if you've been dropped into a time machine and emerged in a parallel universe where ancient Rome meets modern warfare. Just as you're starting to wrap your head around the situation, a sound catches your attention. It's a rhythmic thud-thud-thud, growing louder with each passing second. You squint into the distance, and your eyes widen in disbelief. A group of soldiers is approaching, clad in bronze armor that glints in the sunlight like something out of a medieval fantasy novel. They carry long spears and shields emblazoned with intricate designs that look like they could hold the key to some ancient mystery. The plumes on their helmets bob up and down as they march in perfect formation, a display of discipline and precision that's both impressive and intimidating. Is this some kind of elaborate cosplay convention? One soldier mutters under his breath, his voice laced with a mix of awe and disbelief. Before anyone can respond, Captain Johnson barks out a command, "Battle stations." Suddenly the peaceful atmosphere shatters, replaced by a flurry of activity as everyone springs into action. As you take your position, you can't help but wonder what the next few hours, days, or even weeks will hold. You're a modern-day Marine, equipped with the latest technology and training, but you've just been thrust into a world that's thousands of years removed from everything you know. It's a scenario that's straight out of a science fiction novel, and you're the unwilling protagonist in this epic adventure. But one thing's for sure, this is going to be a story you'll be telling your grandkids, if you make it back home, that is. Imagine you're standing there, your heart pounding in your chest like a drummer on a caffeine high, as those bronze-clad soldiers march closer. It's like watching a scene from Gladiator, but instead of Russell Crowe strutting around, you're about to face off against an army that probably hasn't heard of Wi-Fi or smartphones. The Roman commander, a stern-looking fellow named Varro, rides ahead on his horse, his expression as serious as a judge during a high-stakes courtroom drama. You can almost hear the dramatic music from a historical documentary playing in the background. Captain Johnson steps forward, his posture as straight as a newly ironed dress shirt. He's got that "I've got this" look in his eyes, the kind of look you'd give your computer when you're trying to convince it to stop crashing during an important Zoom meeting. "Let's hope they're more into diplomacy than whatever this is," he mutters, half to himself. But you can tell from the way he grips his sidearm that he's ready for anything. The tension in the air is so thick you could cut it with a butter knife if you had one handy, that is. As the Romans get within shouting distance, Varro raises his hand, and the entire legion comes to an abrupt halt, like a well-choreographed dance troupe hitting a perfect freeze frame. He peers at your group, his eyes narrowing in confusion. You can practically see the gears turning in his head as he tries to make sense of your high-tech gear. "Who are you? And what manner of sorcery is this?" he calls out, his voice booming across the open space. One of the Marines next to you leans in and whispers, "Sorcery. I guess our M16s look like magic wands to them." You have to bite your lip to keep from laughing. It's a strange situation, but there's something almost comical about the idea of these ancient soldiers thinking your modern weapons are some kind of mystical artifacts. Before Captain Johnson can respond, one of the more trigger-happy Marines accidentally bumps into his M249, and a single shot rings out. It's like someone hitting the wrong note during a symphony performance. The sound startles everyone, including the Romans. Varro's eyes widen in shock, and then his expression hardens into one of anger. "Attack!" he roars, and just like that, the peaceful standoff turns into a full-blown battle. The Roman legion charges forward, their shields locked together in a formation that's as tight as the plot of a well-written murder mystery. They let out a deafening war cry, a sound that sends shivers down your spine and makes you think of all those horror movies where the monsters are about to attack. But you're a Marine, and you're not about to let a bunch of guys in bronze armor intimidate you. Fire at will, Captain Johnson shouts, and your side erupts into a hail of gunfire. The M16s rattle off rounds like an angry typewriter on steroids, and the M249s unleash a continuous stream of bullets that would make a machine gun enthusiast drool. The sound is deafening, like standing next to a jet engine during takeoff, and the recoil of your weapon jolts your shoulder, a familiar sensation that grounds you in the chaos of the moment. The Romans, poor guys, don't stand a chance. Their bronze armor, which probably seemed impenetrable in their time, is about as effective against your bullets as a sheet of paper. They drop like flies, their bodies hitting the ground with sickening thuds. It's a brutal sight, and you can't help but feel a twinge of guilt. These aren't faceless enemies from a video game. They're real people fighting for what they believe in. But there's no time to dwell on that now. The Romans, despite their heavy losses, keep coming. They're like zombies in a Walking Dead marathon, relentless and seemingly endless. You notice Varro on the sidelines shouting orders and rallying his troops. He's got the determination of a coach during the fourth quarter of a tied Super Bowl game, refusing to let his team go down without a fight. As you reload your weapon, you can't help but think about how absurd this all is. Here you are, a modern-day soldier, fighting a war against an ancient army in a time that's not your own. It's a scenario that would make even the most imaginative sci-fi writer scratch their head in disbelief. But as the bullets continue to fly and the bodies pile up, you know one thing for sure: there's no going back now. This is a fight to the death, and you're going to do everything in your power to survive, even if it means rewriting history in the process. And just when you think things couldn't get any crazier, you notice something strange. Some of the Roman soldiers aren't charging forward with the same ferocity as before. Instead, they're looking at your weapons with a mix of fear and awe, like kids at a magic show who can't figure out how the trick was done. You wonder if this could be an opportunity, a chance to turn the tide of the battle in your favor. But then again, in a situation as unpredictable as this, who knows what the next few minutes will bring? The battlefield is a swirling chaos of smoke and dust, each breath you take dragging in a gritty mix that stings your throat, part gunpowder, part desert sand, and something else, something metallic, that makes you think of old coins left out in the rain. The air hums with a low, constant roar, the rattle of your M16F4, the deeper growl of the M249s, and beneath it all the distant, ragged shouts of Roman soldiers. It's a symphony of violence, and you're stuck right in the middle of it, your boots sinking into the soft earth that's already starting to turn sticky with blood. Private Jack is crouched beside you, his back pressed against a half-buried stone that might once have been part of a farmer's fence. He's reloading his rifle with a speed that comes from 100 drills, but his hands are shaking just enough to make the magazine clatter against the receiver. "You ever think," he says, his voice tight, "that we'd be here, shooting at guys in togas? It's like someone took a history final and a Call of Duty lobby and blended them in a blender." He snorts, but there's no humor in it, just a nervous edge that makes you glance at his eyes. They're wide, pupils dilated, like he's still trying to wake up from a bad dream. Across the field, the Roman lines are a sea of bronze and leather, their shields locked together in a testudo, the tortoise formation that's supposed to make them invincible. But against your bullets, it's like trying to stop a hailstorm with a colander. You watch as a bullet punches through a shield, through the arm behind it, and the man drops with a scream that's cut off as another round catches him in the chest. The formation stutters, just for a second, and you see fear flicker across the faces of the men behind him. Real human fear, not the heroic stoicism you've seen in movies about ancient wars. Captain Johnson is standing a few yards away, his boots planted firmly in the dirt like he's grown roots. He's got a map spread out on the hood of a Humvee, but he's not looking at it. His gaze is fixed on the enemy, calculating. Every so often, he barks an order into his radio. Concentrate fire on the left flank. They're bunching up like sheep. Or tell the tank to hold its position. We need that ammo for later. His jaw is tight, but his voice never wavers. You wonder if he's as scared as the rest of you, or if years of command have turned him into something that doesn't feel fear anymore. A Roman centurion breaks from the pack, waving his sword and shouting something in Latin that sounds like a rallying cry. He's a big man, broad-shouldered, with a scar that runs from his eyebrow to his jawline. For a second you almost admire him. Bravery's bravery no matter the century. Then he takes a bullet to the throat, and that admiration curdles into something like guilt. He falls backward, his sword clattering to the ground, and the men around him hesitate. That's when you realize they're not just soldiers, they're fathers, sons, maybe even poets or blacksmiths when they're not fighting. The sun dips lower, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple that feel wrong, too beautiful for this. Your arm aches from holding your rifle, and your mouth is so dry you can barely swallow. You fumble for your canteen, unscrew the cap, and take a tiny sip. Water's precious here, even more than ammo. As you cap it, you hear a sound that makes your blood run cold, the click of an empty chamber. To your left, a young private freezes, his eyes wide. "I'm out," he whispers, like he's afraid the Romans will hear. Johnson must have heard him too, because he turns, his expression hardening. "Fix bayonets," he says, and the words hang in the air. Bayonets? Against swords and shields? It feels like a bad joke, but no one laughs. You reach down, fumble with the latch, and the cold steel of the bayonet slides into place with a satisfying click. It's not much, but it's something. In the distance you hear the creak of wood and the shout of orders. More Romans maybe, or something else. You squint, and your heart sinks. It's a cohort of auxiliary troops, archers, their bows already drawn. Arrows won't do much against your body armor, but they'll sting, and they'll keep you pinned down while the main force advances. This is getting complicated, fast. Jack nudges you, nodding at a group of Romans who've broken ranks, running for cover behind a cluster of rocks. "Think they're getting smart?" he asks. You shrug, maybe, or maybe they're just scared. Either way, it doesn't matter. The rules of this fight are changing, and you're not sure you're ready for what comes next. All you know is that the sun is setting, your ammo is low, and somewhere beyond that line of shields and spears, there are thousands more waiting to take their place. Tonight, you think, is going to be a long one. As the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in a somber palette of bruised purples and deep inky blues, Captain Johnson knows it's time to make a move. The Marines' ammunition is dwindling at an alarming rate, and with Roman reinforcements streaming in like ants to a picnic, staying put is a death sentence. "Listen up," he shouts, his voice cutting through the exhausted silence that has settled over the makeshift camp. "We're pulling back to that abandoned castle we spotted earlier. It's our best shot at holding out until we figure this mess out." The men groan, not out of disobedience but sheer fatigue. Their limbs ache from hours of non-stop fighting, and the weight of their gear feels like it's been doubled. Private Thompson, a lanky recruit with a penchant for terrible jokes, manages a weak grin. "Great, so we're going from fighting Romans to playing medieval castle defenders. Next thing you know, we'll be jousting on M1 tanks." A few chuckles ripple through the group, a much-needed release of the tension that's been building like pressure in a pressure cooker. The retreat begins under the cover of darkness, a slow, cautious dance with danger. The Marines move in a tight formation, their boots muffled by the soft earth and the occasional clink of metal against metal, the only sounds that break the stillness. Every shadow seems to hide a potential threat. Every rustle in the bushes makes hearts skip a beat. They pass through a narrow forest path, where the trees form a canopy overhead, blotting out what little moonlight filters through. It's like walking through a tunnel of blackness, and for a moment it feels as though they've been swallowed whole by the night itself. Suddenly a twig snaps, everyone freezes, weapons at the ready. From the underbrush emerges a small band of Roman scouts, their eyes widening in shock at the sight of the heavily armed Marines. Before they can sound the alarm, a flurry of suppressed gunfire rings out, and the Romans crumple to the ground. But the damage is done. The noise echoes through the forest, a clarion call that could alert nearby enemy forces. Move, move, move. Johnson barks and the Marines break into a jog, their earlier caution replaced by a sense of urgency. When they finally reach the castle, it looms before them like a relic from a forgotten age. Its stone walls are weathered and cracked, with chunks missing here and there, but it still stands tall and imposing. The main gate is a massive slab of wood reinforced with iron bands, though it sags slightly on its hinges. "All right, let's get to work," Johnson orders. "Secure the perimeter, set up barricades, and see if there's any water or supplies inside. And keep your eyes peeled. We won't have long before the Romans come knocking." Inside the castle, the Marines find a large courtyard filled with overgrown weeds and debris. A well sits in the center, its wooden bucket rotted and broken, but they can hear the faint trickle of water below. "Thank God for small mercies," mutters Sergeant Diaz, wiping sweat from his brow. Meanwhile, others are scavenging for anything that could be used as a weapon or a defensive tool. They find old rusted swords and shields, discarded tools, and even a stack of crumbling wooden planks that they can use to reinforce the walls. As the Marines work feverishly, word of their whereabouts reaches the ears of Emperor Augustus. Seated on his ornate throne in the heart of Rome, he listens intently to the messenger's report, his expression growing darker with each passing word. "These strangers have caused enough chaos," he growls, his fist slamming down on the armrest. "Gather all available legions. I want that castle surrounded by dawn, and those invaders eliminated. They will learn the price of challenging the might of Rome." Back at the castle, Captain Johnson surveys the defenses. The barricades are in place, the sentries are posted, and the men have managed to rig up a crude warning system using ropes and bells, but he knows it's far from perfect. The castle is vast, and with their limited numbers it will be difficult to defend every inch of the perimeter. "We'll have to make every bullet count," he tells his officers, "and pray that whatever brought us here decides to cut us some slack." As he looks out over the darkened landscape, he can almost feel the weight of the Roman army bearing down on them, a storm brewing on the horizon that threatens to engulf them all. Dawn breaks over the ancient castle, casting a pale, sickly light over the tense scene. The Marines, haggard from a sleepless night of fortifying defenses, peer out from behind the battlements. Below them, the Roman legions have formed a near impenetrable ring around the stronghold, their bronze armor glinting in the early morning sun like a sea of molten metal. The air is thick with anticipation, a palpable tension that makes the back of your neck prickle and your stomach twist into knots. Vero, the seasoned Roman commander, rides his horse to the front of the formation. His face is set in a mask of determination, but there's a flicker of unease in his eyes as he studies the imposing walls of the castle and the modern weapons his soldiers have described. Raising his voice, he calls out in a booming tone that echoes across the open space, "Inhabitants of the castle, you are surrounded. Surrender now, lay down your strange weapons, and swear allegiance to the great Emperor Augustus, and you may yet be spared." Captain Johnson steps onto the ramparts, his posture unyielding. He grabs a megaphone, the sound of its feedback screeching through the air like a wounded animal. "Tell your emperor," he replies, his voice cold and steady, "that we're not going anywhere. We're Marines, and we don't surrender. If you want this castle, you'll have to pry it from our cold, dead hands." His words send a ripple of fierce pride through the ranks of the Marines, and they raise their weapons in a show of defiance, the metallic clatter echoing off the stone walls. With that, the battle begins. The Romans start by launching volleys of arrows at the castle. The shafts arc through the sky, a menacing cloud blotting out the sun. But the Marines, shielded by the thick stone walls and their own body armor, mostly remain unharmed. Some arrows thud into the wooden barricades or bounce harmlessly off the metal surfaces of the tanks parked near the gate, creating a rhythmic, almost hypnotic percussion that adds to the chaos. Next, the Romans roll forward their siege towers, massive wooden structures on wheels that groan and creak under their own weight like ancient beasts awakening from a long slumber. Each tower is packed with soldiers, their faces painted with a mix of excitement and fear as they prepare to scale the walls. The Marines watch with bated breath, their fingers tightening on the triggers of their guns. As the siege towers draw near, the Marines open fire. The M249s unleash a hail of bullets, shredding through the wooden planks of the towers like a hot knife through butter. Splinters fly everywhere, and the screams of the Roman soldiers inside the towers are drowned out by the deafening roar of the guns. But the Romans are relentless. They continue to push the towers forward, using shields to deflect the bullets as best they can. One of the towers manages to reach the castle wall. Roman soldiers pour out, their swords drawn, ready to engage in brutal hand-to-hand combat. A Marine, Private Jenkins, rushes forward with his bayonet fixed. He plunges it into the chest of the first Roman to reach the ramparts, the force of the impact knocking the man backward off the wall. But more Romans follow, and soon, the ramparts are a seething mass of bodies, a chaotic melee of steel and flesh. Inside the castle courtyard, other Marines are busy preparing Molotov cocktails from whatever flammable materials they can find. They mix oil and rags in old jars, their hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline coursing through their veins. "These should give those bastards a warm welcome," mutters Corporal Lewis, a burly man with a thick beard. When the first wave of Romans manages to break through the main gate, the Marines hurl the makeshift explosives down at them. Flames erupt, engulfing the Roman soldiers in a fiery inferno, and their terrified screams fill the air. As the battle rages on, the Marines start to feel the strain. Their ammunition is running low again, and the constant fighting is taking a toll on their bodies and minds. Some soldiers are injured, their cries of pain mingling with the sounds of battle. Captain Johnson, despite his own fatigue, continues to move among the men, offering words of encouragement and strategic advice. "We've held them off this long," he shouts, his voice hoarse from shouting, "and we're not going to let up now. Remember why we're here, and fight like hell." On the Roman side, Varro is growing increasingly frustrated. He had expected a quick victory, but these strange invaders have proven to be far more formidable than he could have imagined. He paces back and forth, barking orders to his lieutenants, trying to find a weak point in the castle's defenses. "We need to break their spirit," he yells. "Send in more troops, we'll overwhelm them by sheer numbers." As the sun climbs higher in the sky, the battle shows no signs of abating. The castle, once a silent, abandoned relic, is now a violent cauldron of death and destruction. Both sides are locked in a brutal struggle, each unwilling to yield, and the outcome of this epic clash remains uncertain. Every shot fired, every sword swing, brings them one step closer to either victory or defeat, and the fate of the Marines and the ancient Romans hangs in the balance. As the midday sun beats down on the battle-scarred castle, a tenuous lull descends upon the battlefield. The air, thick with the coppery stench of blood and the acrid smoke of gunpowder, seems to hold its breath, as if even the very atmosphere is wary of disturbing the fragile peace. For the Marines huddled behind the castle walls and the Roman soldiers massed outside, this brief respite is a double-edged sword, a chance to catch their breath, but also a moment that amplifies every fear and doubt. Inside the castle, Private Jack slumps against a cold stone wall, his rifle resting across his lap. His uniform is stained with sweat, dirt, and splatters of blood, some his own, some not. He stares blankly at the ground, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. You ever wonder, he says suddenly, his voice so low it's almost a whisper, if this is how the dinosaurs felt, just minding their own business one day, and then bam, the world flips upside down, and they're in the middle of something they can't possibly understand. He lets out a bitter laugh, a sound that's more like a sob caught in his throat. Next to him, Corporal Diaz is methodically cleaning the barrel of his M249. He pauses, looking up at Jack with a mix of concern and exasperation. If we're dinosaurs, then at least we've got teeth that can bite back, he replies, tapping the machine gun. But seriously, kid, keep it together. We're not done yet. Despite his tough words, Diaz's hands tremble slightly as he reassembles the weapon, a telltale sign that the pressure is getting to him too. Captain Johnson, meanwhile, is poring over a makeshift map of the castle grounds, his brow furrowed in concentration. But every so often, his gaze drifts towards the horizon, where the Roman camp stretches out like a dark stain on the landscape. He can't help but wonder how long they can hold out. Their ammunition is dangerously low, and the constant attacks are wearing down the men's morale. We're like a ship caught in a hurricane, he mutters to himself. All we can do is batten down the hatches and hope for the best. Outside the castle, the Roman camp is a hive of activity. Soldiers are sharpening their swords, mending their shields, and whispering among themselves. The air is charged with a sense of unease, and rumors are spreading like wildfire. Some say the strangers in the castle are demons sent from the underworld, their weapons spitting fire and thunder. Others claim they're emissaries of the gods, testing Rome's might. Varro, the Roman commander, tries to quell the whispers, but even he can't deny the growing sense of dread. He stands on a small rise, looking up at the imposing castle walls. In all his years of warfare, he's never faced an enemy like this. Their weapons are like nothing he's ever seen, and their tactics are as unpredictable as the wind. How do you fight an opponent you don't understand? He asks his second in command, Lucius, his voice heavy with frustration. Lucius strokes his chin thoughtfully. Perhaps we need to stop trying to fight them on their terms, he suggests. Their strength lies in their long-range weapons. If we can get close, engage them in hand-to-hand combat. His voice trails off, and Varro knows what he's thinking. It's a risky plan. The Marines may be outnumbered, but they're fierce fighters, and their strange metal armor seems to protect them from many of Rome's weapons. Among the Roman ranks, a young soldier named Gaius is struggling with his own fears. He joined the legions hoping for glory and adventure, but this battle has been nothing like he imagined. He watches as medics carry away the bodies of his comrades, their faces pale and bloodless, and he can't help but think of his mother back in Rome. What if I never see her again? He whispers, tears welling up in his eyes. His friend Marcus claps him on the shoulder. Don't be a fool, Gaius. We're Romans. We'll crush these invaders and march back to Rome in triumph. Just you wait and see. But Marcus's voice lacks its usual confidence, and Gaius can tell he's just as scared as he is. As the afternoon wears on, the lull in the fighting comes to an end. Both sides brace themselves for the next wave of attacks, their minds filled with a potent mix of fear, determination, and desperation. The psychological battle, it seems, is just as fierce as the physical one, and the outcome of this clash of wills may very well determine the fate of the castle and of everyone inside it. The sweltering afternoon sun beats down on the beleaguered castle, casting long, ominous shadows that seem to mirror the Marines' growing despair. Inside the walls, the situation has reached a critical juncture. The ammunition boxes that once clanked with the weight of bullets now rattle emptily, and the water in the well is dropping at an alarming rate, as if the earth itself is sucking it back into its parched depths. It's a race against time, and every passing minute feels like a tick closer to disaster. Private Jack pries open a ration box with trembling fingers, his eyes widening in disappointment. As he finds nothing but a half-eaten energy bar and a packet of dehydrated fruit, he mutters, his voice cracking. Feels like the universe is playing a cruel game of Survivor, and we're the contestants with the worst luck ever. I'd kill for a slice of pizza right now. No, scratch that. I'd trade my M16 for a whole pepperoni pizza with extra cheese. His attempt at humor falls flat, replaced by a heavy silence as the other Marines around him share similar expressions of hunger and exhaustion. Captain Johnson calls an urgent meeting in what used to be the castle's great hall. The once grand room is now filled with the detritus of war, broken weapons, tattered uniforms, and makeshift stretchers for the wounded. His face is etched with fatigue, but his eyes still burn with determination. "Listen up, men," he begins, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "Our ammo is down to less than 20%, and the water won't last more than another day if we don't ration it strictly. It's like we're in a high-stakes poker game, and we're running out of chips fast, but we're not out of the game yet." Sergeant Diaz raises his hand, his brow furrowed in concern. "Sir, what about the food? Some of the guys are starting to feel dizzy from lack of proper nutrition." "It's not just about fighting off the Romans. We're fighting our own bodies now." Johnson nods grimly. "I've sent a scouting party to search the surrounding area for supplies, but it's a risky move. We can't afford to lose any more men. In the meantime, we'll double down on rationing. And as for the water," he pauses, looking at the dirty, half-filled canteens on the table. "We'll start collecting rainwater, filtering it as best we can. It's not ideal, but it's better than nothing." Outside the castle, the Roman legions are on the move again. Emperor Augustus, enraged by the Marines' stubborn resistance, has ordered a full mise-scale assault. Varro, the commander, paces back and forth in his tent, studying a detailed map of the castle's defenses. "These foreigners think they can hold out forever," he snarls, slamming his fist on a wooden table. "But they're like a dying animal cornered in its lair. We just need to find the right way to strike." His lieutenant Lucius points to a section of the castle wall that appears to be less fortified. "Sir, if we concentrate our forces here, and use the siege towers to create a distraction on the other side, we might be able to breach the defenses. It's a bold move, but it could work." Varro strokes his chin thoughtfully. "It's risky. They'll likely have some sort of trap waiting for us, but we have the numbers, and they're running out of resources. We'll send in the auxiliaries first. Let them test the waters. If they can draw out the Marines' remaining firepower, our main force can move in for the kill." Back inside the castle, the scouting party returns with grim news. "Sir, we found an old granary about 2 miles east, but it's heavily guarded by Roman soldiers," reports Corporal Lewis. "There were at least 24 of them, and they had archers posted on the rooftops. It's a fortress in its own right." Johnson sighs heavily. "Damn, that was our best shot at replenishing our supplies. All right, new plan. We'll send a small elite team to launch a surprise attack on the granary tonight. It's a long shot, but if we can get our hands on that food and maybe some extra weapons, it could turn the tide of this battle." "Volunteers?" The room is silent for a moment. Then slowly a few hands rise. Jack is among the first. "I'm in, sir. It's either this or waiting here to starve or get overrun. At least this way we're taking the fight to them." As the sun begins to set, casting an eerie orange glow over the battlefield, the Marines prepare for their most dangerous mission yet. The tension is palpable, like a thick fog that clings to every corner of the castle. Everyone knows that the next few hours could mean the difference between survival and defeat, and the weight of that knowledge hangs heavy in the air. The Roman army, meanwhile, is also gearing up for its final push, confident that victory is within reach. It's a powder keg waiting to explode, and no one knows who will come out on top when the dust finally settles. As the moon rises high above the ancient landscape, casting an otherworldly silver glow over the battlefield, the small, elite marine team stealthily makes its way towards the Roman granary. The night is thick with tension, the only sounds being the soft crunch of gravel under their boots and the occasional hoot of an owl, a sound that seems to mock their perilous mission. Each man is on high alert, their eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of danger, their hands gripping their weapons tightly enough to turn their knuckles white. Private Jack, his heart pounding in his chest like a jackhammer, can't shake the feeling that they're being watched. This is just like that horror movie where the dumb teenagers wander into the haunted house. He whispers to Corporal Lewis beside him. Except we're armed to the teeth and have a real shot at coming out alive, hopefully. His attempt at humor is met with a tense glare from Lewis, who simply puts a finger to his lips, signaling for silence. The team moves through a narrow ravine, the walls on either side rising up like the jagged teeth of some ancient beast. The darkness here is almost tangible, a thick velvety cloak that wraps around them, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. Suddenly Jack stumbles over a rock, his rifle clattering softly against the ground. Everyone freezes, their blood turning to ice in their veins. For what feels like an eternity, they wait, listening intently for any sound of alarm from the nearby Roman guards. But there's nothing but the eerie silence of the night. After what seems like hours but is likely only a few minutes, they finally reach the outskirts of the granary. The large wooden structures loom in the darkness, surrounded by a crude wooden fence. Torches flicker at regular intervals, casting dancing shadows that make it seem as if the very walls are alive. Jack counts at least 6 guards patrolling the perimeter, their bronze helmets glinting in the torchlight like malevolent eyes. Corporal Lewis signals for the team to split up. 2 Marines will stay behind to provide cover fire, while the rest will attempt to breach the fence and make their way to the main storage buildings. Jack and another soldier, Private Thompson, are tasked with disabling the archers on the rooftops. They crouch low, using the shadows as their shield, and make their way towards the ladder leading up to the roof. As they reach the base of the ladder, Jack takes a deep breath. His hands are slick with sweat, and his mouth is so dry he can barely swallow. On 3, he mouths to Thompson. 1, 2, 3. They spring into action, silently scaling the ladder. At the top they find 2 archers, their backs turned as they look out over the fields. Jack raises his rifle, his finger hovering over the trigger. His heart is in his throat, and for a split second he hesitates. These are men with families, dreams, just like him. But then he remembers the starving Marines back at the castle, and his resolve hardens. He pulls the trigger, and the 2 archers crumple to the ground without a sound. Meanwhile, the rest of the team has managed to cut through the fence and is making their way towards the granary. But just as they reach the doors, a Roman guard rounds the corner. His eyes widen in shock at the sight of the heavily armed Marines, and he opens his mouth to sound the alarm. Before he can, a quick burst of suppressed gunfire from Lewis silences him. But the damage is done. The sound echoes through the night, and almost immediately, the granary erupts into chaos. Roman soldiers pour out of the buildings, their swords drawn. The Marines open fire, their weapons spitting fire, and lead into the darkness. The air is filled with the deafening roar of gunfire, the screams of the wounded, and the clash of steel. Jack and Thompson scramble down from the roof and join the fray, their rifles blazing. They manage to make their way to the storage rooms and are greeted with a sight that makes their hearts soar: stacks upon stacks of grain, barrels of oil, and even a few crates of what looks like primitive weapons. "Grab what you can," Lewis shouts over the din of battle. The Marines quickly fill their packs with as much food and supplies as they can carry. But the Roman forces are regrouping, and it's clear they won't be able to hold them off for long. "Fall back! Fall back!" Lewis yells, and the team begins to make a hasty retreat. As they run, they're met with a hail of arrows and sword swings. Private Thompson takes an arrow to the shoulder, but he doesn't stop. "I'm not going down without a fight," he shouts, gritting his teeth in pain. The team makes it back to the ravine, but the Romans are hot on their heels. Just as they think they're in the clear, a group of Roman cavalry emerges from the darkness, their horses neighing and their swords glinting in the moonlight. It's a desperate fight for survival. The Marines use every last bit of ammunition, every ounce of strength they have left. Jack finds himself face to face with a burly Roman soldier. The man swings his sword, but Jack manages to dodge, countering with a swift kick to the man's knee. The Roman goes down, and Jack finishes him off with a shot to the head. But there are too many of them, and the Marines are slowly being overwhelmed. Just when all seems lost, a familiar sound breaks through the chaos, the roar of a Marine tank. Captain Johnson has sent reinforcements. The tank barrels towards the Roman forces, firing its cannon and machine guns. The Romans are caught off guard and their formation breaks. Taking advantage of the confusion, the Marines make their escape, their packs full of much-needed supplies, but at a great cost. Several of their comrades lie dead on the battlefield, their sacrifice ensuring that the rest of them can make it back to the castle and fight another day. In the opulent palace of Rome, Emperor Augustus sits on his gilded throne, surrounded by advisors and servants. The room is filled with the soft glow of oil lamps, casting intricate shadows on the marble walls adorned with elaborate frescoes. A sense of grandeur and authority hangs heavy in the air, but that tranquility is about to be shattered. A messenger bursts into the hall, his face pale and sweat-soaked, his chest heaving from the long, hard ride. He drops to one knee, his voice trembling as he delivers the news. "Your Majesty, the granary, it has been attacked. The strangers from the castle have destroyed our supplies and escaped with a significant amount of our provisions." For a moment there is dead silence. Augustus's expression is unreadable, his eyes fixed on the messenger as if he's trying to comprehend the impossible. Then, with a suddenness that makes everyone in the room jump, he leaps to his feet, his face contorted with rage. The goblet of wine in his hand crashes to the floor, shattering into 1,000 pieces, the deep red liquid spreading across the marble like blood. "This cannot stand," he roars, his voice echoing through the vast hall. "These insolent invaders have gone too far. They think they can humiliate Rome and get away with it?" His advisors exchange nervous glances, none daring to speak. Augustus paces back and forth, his fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles turn white. "Varro," he shouts. "Summon Commander Varro at once. I want him here, now." When Varro arrives, he finds the emperor in a towering rage. "You assured me that the granary was secure," Augustus hisses, his eyes blazing with fury. "You said those foreigners were on the brink of defeat, and yet they managed to launch a successful attack right under our noses." Varro bows his head, his face flushed with shame. "Your Majesty, I underestimated their audacity, but I swear, I will not make the same mistake again. We will crush them, once and for all." Augustus glares at him for a long moment, then sighs heavily. "We must act quickly. The loss of the granary is a severe blow, but we cannot let it demoralize our troops. I want every available legion assembled. We will surround the castle and lay siege to it until those invaders are nothing but ash at our feet. No more mercy, no more half measures. This time we will show them the full might of Rome." Varro nods solemnly. "Yes, Your Majesty. I will see to it personally. We will construct battering rams, more siege towers, and we will dig trenches around the castle. They will have nowhere to run, nowhere to hide." Back at the Roman camp, the news of the granary attack spreads like wildfire. Soldiers gather in small groups, muttering among themselves. Some are angry, their faces red with frustration, eager to avenge their fallen comrades and the lost supplies. Others are anxious, their eyes wide with worry, The Marines have proven themselves to be formidable opponents, and the thought of a prolonged siege fills them with dread. Among the troops is a young soldier named Titus. He sits on a wooden crate, sharpening his sword with a whetstone, but his mind is elsewhere. What if they have more tricks up their sleeves? He asks his friend Publius. Those strangers seem to appear out of nowhere, and their weapons, they're like nothing I've ever seen. I'm not sure even our best efforts will be enough. Publius scoffs, but there's a hint of unease in his voice. Don't be a coward, Titus. We're Romans. We've conquered countless lands, defeated armies 10 times our size. These foreigners are just a minor setback. Once we surround the castle, it's only a matter of time before they surrender or die. But Titus isn't convinced. He's seen firsthand the damage those strange weapons can do, and he knows that the Marines are not going to give up easily. As he continues to sharpen his sword, he can't help but wonder what the next few days will bring. Will Rome emerge victorious, or will this be the beginning of a great humiliation for the empire? As night falls, the Roman camp is ablaze with activity. The sound of hammers pounding, wood being cut, and orders being shouted fills the air. The legions are preparing for the final assault, their determination steeled by the emperor's wrath and the desire for revenge. The stage is set for an epic confrontation, and the fate of the castle, and perhaps even the future of Rome, hangs in the balance. Inside the ancient castle, a somber atmosphere hangs heavy, thicker than the smoke still lingering from the previous battles. The Marines, their faces etched with fatigue and determination, know that the final showdown with the Roman legions is imminent. The air is filled with the sounds of clanking metal, as soldiers sharpen their bayonets and check the mechanisms of their weapons for the umpteenth time. It's a symphony of preparation, each note carrying the weight of their lives and the fate of their unlikely mission. Captain Johnson stands on the ramparts, looking out at the Roman camp that stretches across the horizon like a dark, menacing tide. His binoculars sweep over the enemy's new fortifications, rows of siege towers being assembled, battering rams taking shape, and trenches being dug with methodical precision. They're pulling out all the stops, he mutters to Sergeant Diaz, who stands beside him, his arms crossed. This is going to be a fight like no other. Diaz nods, his expression grim. We've fortified the weak points as best we can, sir. But with our ammo and supplies low, it's like trying to build a dam with toothpicks and chewing gum. His attempt at a dark joke falls flat, replaced by the cold, hard reality of their situation. Down in the courtyard, Private Jack is helping to stack barrels of oil near the main gate. His mind keeps drifting back to his family back in the States. He imagines his mother's worried face, his father's stoic silence as they watch the news, wondering what happened to their son. "Hey Jack," calls out Corporal Lewis, breaking into his thoughts. "Quit daydreaming and focus. We've got work to do, and we'll need every ounce of energy when those Romans come knocking." Jack shakes his head, trying to clear the thoughts. "Sorry, Lou. Just thinking about home." He grabs another barrel, his muscles straining under the weight. "You think we've got a chance against all that?" He nods towards the Roman camp, where torches flicker like a sea of malevolent fireflies. Lewis pauses, his hand still on the barrel he's holding. "I don't know, kid. But I do know this: we're Marines. And Marines don't go down without a fight. We'll make them pay for every inch of ground they try to take from us." His words are a small comfort, a glimmer of hope in the otherwise bleak situation. In a corner of the courtyard, the medics are preparing for the inevitable. They lay out their meager supplies, rolls of bandages, jars of ointment, and a few bottles of painkillers. Nurse Carter, a tough NS nails woman with a heart of gold, checks each item carefully. "This is all we've got," she says to her assistant, Private Jenkins. "We'll have to make it count. Triage the wounded as best you can, and don't waste a single drop of antiseptic." Jenkins nods, his face pale. "Yes, ma'am, but what if there are too many? What if we can't help them all?" Carter looks at him, her eyes filled with a mix of compassion and determination. "Then we do our best. That's all we can ever do." Remember, every life we save is a victory, no matter how small. As the sun begins to set, casting an orange-red glow over the battlefield, the Marines gather for a final briefing. Captain Johnson stands on a makeshift platform, looking out at the faces of his men and women. Tomorrow the Romans will come, he begins, his voice steady and strong. They'll come with everything they've got, and they'll expect us to crumble. But we're not just any soldiers. We're the United States Marine Corps, and we've faced impossible odds before and come out on top. He pauses, letting his words sink in. We may be outnumbered, outnest, resourced, and in a world that's not our own, but we have something they don't: heart, courage, and the will to fight for what's right. Whether we make it out of this alive or not, we'll make sure that the name of the Marine Corps is remembered in this ancient land. Semper Fi, Marines. Semper Fi, the Marines respond, their voices echoing through the castle, a defiant roar that cuts through the growing darkness. As they disperse to their positions, each one knows that the next day could be their last. But they're ready, prepared to face whatever comes their way with the unwavering spirit of the Corps. The stage is set for the ultimate battle, and the outcome remains uncertain, a question mark hanging heavy over the ancient castle and all those within its walls. Dawn breaks over the battlefield, but there is no beauty in this morning's light. The sky is tinged with a sickly orange bray, as if the very atmosphere is stained with the blood and smoke of the impending battle. The Roman legions, a vast sea of bronze and leather, surge forward with a deafening war cry that shakes the ground beneath the Marines' feet. It's a sound that cuts through the stillness like a hot knife through butter, striking fear into the hearts of even the bravest soldiers. Hold your positions. Captain Johnson's voice booms over the chaos. His face is set in a mask of determination, but his eyes betray a hint of worry. He knows that this is the moment they've been dreading, the moment when all their preparations will be put to the ultimate test. The Marines grip their weapons tightly, their knuckles white, as the first wave of Roman arrows arcs through the sky. The arrows rain down on the castle, thudding into the stone walls and wooden barricades. Some find their mark, piercing the armor of unlucky Marines. Private Jenkins lets out a scream as an arrow lodges in his shoulder, but he doesn't falter. He grits his teeth, pulls out the arrow with a sickening yank, and continues firing his rifle at the advancing Romans. It's a scene straight out of a nightmare, a brutal dance of death and destruction. Then the siege towers reach the castle walls. Roman soldiers pour out like ants, their swords glinting in the dim light. The Marines open fire with everything they have left, but the sheer number of Romans is overwhelming. The M249s rattle off their last rounds, and the sound of empty chambers clicks through the air like a death knell. Bayonets, someone shouts, and the Marines charge forward, their blades ready for close quarters combat. Private Jack finds himself face to face with a burly Roman centurion. The man's eyes are filled with a fierce determination, and his sword swings with the force of a sledgehammer. Jack dodges to the side, his heart pounding in his chest like a jackhammer on overdrive. He jabs his bayonet forward, but the centurion blocks it with his shield, then counters with a swift strike. Jack barely manages to parry it, the impact sending shockwaves through his arms. In another part of the castle, Sergeant Diaz is leading a group of Marines in a desperate defense. They're surrounded on all sides, but they fight like cornered tigers. Diaz's rifle is slung over his back. He's relying on his sidearm now. He fires round after round, each shot taking down a Roman soldier, but there are too many of them. A sword catches him in the side, and he stumbles, blood gushing from the wound. "Don't stop," he shouts to his men, his voice weakening. "Keep fighting." The battle rages on hour after hour. The courtyard is littered with the bodies of the fallen, both Roman and Marine. The ground is soaked in blood, turning the dirt into a sticky, muddy mess. The air is filled with the stench of death, a sickening combination of blood, sweat, and burning flesh. It's a scene that would make even the most hardened veteran puke. Captain Johnson is in the thick of the fight, his pistol in one hand and a bloodied knife in the other. He's been hit twice, but he refuses to go down. He sees a group of Roman soldiers trying to break through the main gate, and he charges towards them screaming like a madman. His pistol roars and 2 Romans fall, but then he runs out of bullets. He brandishes his knife and engages in a brutal hand-to-hand fight, his strength slowly ebbing away. As the sun reaches its zenith, the Marines' resistance begins to crumble. The Romans have breached the walls in multiple places, and the once formidable defense of the castle is now in shambles. But the Marines don't give up. They fight to the last man, each one determined to make the Romans pay for every inch of ground they take. Private Jack, his uniform torn and blood-soaked, finds himself back to midday back with Corporal Lewis. They're surrounded by a dozen Roman soldiers, but they stand tall, their bayonets at the ready. "It's been an honor, Lou," Jack says, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through his veins. Lewis nods, a faint smile on his lips. "Same here, kid. Let's go out with a bang." And with that they charge into the enemy, their battle cries echoing through the castle as they embrace their inevitable fate. The battle for the ancient castle is a bloodbath, a testament to the unwavering courage and sacrifice of the Marines and the overwhelming might of the Roman legions. In the end, only the ruins of the castle and the bodies of the fallen remain, a silent witness to the epic clash that will be remembered for centuries to come. You blink, your eyes stinging from a toxic mix of smoke, blood, and sweat. The air around you is thick, like wading through a fog made of death and despair. As your vision clears, you're greeted by a scene straight out of a post-apocalyptic movie. The castle, once a symbol of hope and defense, now lies in ruins. Broken walls crumble at your feet, and charred beams jut out at odd angles, as if reaching for the sky in a final desperate plea. Bodies, Roman and Marine alike, are strewn everywhere, a macabre carpet of fallen warriors. Your ears are still ringing from the deafening chaos of battle. The screams, the clashing of steel, the thunderous roars of your weapons, it all blends into a nightmarish symphony that plays on repeat in your mind. You try to take a step, but your legs feel like they're made of lead, heavy with exhaustion and the weight of what you've just endured. Every muscle in your body aches, and a dull throbbing pain radiates from a fresh gash on your arm, a souvenir from a Roman sword. Looking around, you spot Captain Johnson. He's leaning against a half-millennia's destroyed wall, his uniform tattered and soaked in blood. His face is a mask of fatigue, but there's a glimmer of something else in his eyes. Pride, perhaps, or maybe just disbelief that any of you made it through. "We did it, sort of," he mutters, his voice hoarse. "We held them off as long as we could." You make your way over to him, stepping carefully over the bodies and debris. "What now, sir?" you ask, your voice barely above a whisper. The question hangs in the air, heavy with uncertainty. There's no denying it. You're in a world that's not your own, with dwindling supplies and an enemy that won't stop until you're all gone. Before he can answer, a strange pulsating glow catches your attention. It starts as a faint flicker in the distance, like a distant lightning strike on the horizon, but it grows brighter, more intense, until it's a swirling mass of purple and blue light that seems to suck the very air around it into its center. It's the same otherworldly phenomenon that brought you here in the first place, and your heart skips a beat at the sight. The Marines who are still standing freeze, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and hope. Some reach for their weapons instinctively, while others simply stare transfixed by the sight. What is that?" someone stammers, their voice trembling. Captain Johnson straightens up, his eyes locked on the glowing portal. "I don't know," he admits, "but it might just be our ticket out of here." Or, his voice trails off, and you can almost hear the unspoken thought hanging in the air, or it could be the final nail in our coffin. As the portal continues to expand, a strange humming fills the air, a sound that vibrates through your bones and sets your teeth on edge. It's like standing too close to a high melee voltage transformer, that constant buzzing hum that makes your hair stand on end. You exchange a nervous glance with the Marine next to you. This is it, the moment that will decide whether you live or die, whether you return home or remain trapped in this ancient war-torn world forever. With a final earth-shattering boom, the portal reaches its full size. A gust of wind rushes out, strong enough to knock you off your feet if you weren't bracing yourself. The air is charged with electricity, and you can feel the hairs on your arms standing up. Captain Johnson takes a deep breath, then looks at the remaining Marines. "Okay, folks," he says, his voice steady, despite the chaos around him. "We're going in, whatever's on the other side. It has to be better than this." You swallow hard, your mouth suddenly dry. This is it, your chance to go home, or your last desperate gamble. You take a step forward, your heart pounding in your chest. The portal's light washes over you, and for a moment everything goes white. Then, just like that, you're falling, hurtling through a tunnel of light and sound, your stomach lurching as if you're on the world's wildest roller coaster. As the light fades and your senses slowly return, you open your eyes, bracing yourself for whatever awaits. But what you see next will change everything. You're no longer in the ruined castle, no longer surrounded by the bodies of the fallen. Instead, you're back in the familiar desert of Afghanistan, the sun beating down on you just like it did that fateful day when you were first pulled into this crazy adventure. The question is, did you bring anything back from that ancient world? And more importantly, will you ever be able to forget the horrors you've witnessed?